They thought the story was over when the truth came out. They were wrong. In the last chapter, a billionaire exposed the people who loved his money more than his life. But now comes the hardest question of all. Can betrayal be forgiven when it comes from family? This next chapter will test love, pride, and redemption in ways no one expected. Let's continue the story. Stay with us. And somewhere in the city, a man once thought dead walked freely, alive in ways money could never buy. Even after the truth settled, the city refused to forget. Everywhere my father went, people stared, some with admiration, others with anger. Is that really him? He's the man who faked his death. He exposed his own family. To the public, he was a mystery. To me, he was still just Dad, ordering tea instead of champagne, wearing simple shirts, choosing quiet streets over red carpets. But peace doesn't come all at once. Sometimes, it comes in pieces. Marcus didn't handle the loss well. Without the money, without the influence, he became restless. He blamed everyone. The media. The court. Me. "You think you're better than us now," he said one day when he cornered me outside a cafe. "I think we had choices," I replied calmly. "You chose differently." His jaw tightened. "You stole my future." "No," I said softly. "You gambled it." That was the last time we spoke for a long while. Naomi tried to survive on charm. Brand deals. Apologies. Carefully edited tears. But influence built on money fades fast. One evening, she called me. "I don't know who I am without luxury," she admitted. That sentence shocked me more than any insult she had ever thrown. "You can find out," I said, "if you're willing to start small." She didn't answer. Some people want healing. Others want restoration without repentance. A year after the reveal, I received a letter. Handwritten. From my father. If you're reading this, it began. Then I finally found the courage to say what matters most. He wrote about fear. About loneliness. About the guilt of confusing provision with presence. "I wasn't always a good father," he admitted. "But you loved me anyway." I cried over that letter for hours. Sometimes, healing doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from honesty written in ink. We launched the Cole Legacy Foundation quietly. No press conference. No headlines. Just action. Students from neighborhoods forgotten by the system received laptops, mentorship, and hope. My father insisted on one rule. No one must know my name to benefit. That was how I knew he had changed. One afternoon, my father collapsed during a walk. This time, it was real. The hospital smelled like fear. I held his hand, memories flooding in. "Don't fake this one," I whispered through tears. He smiled weakly. "I'm not done yet." The doctors stabilized him. But mortality has a way of humbling even billionaires. While recovering, he said something that stunned me. "I owe your mother an apology." I blinked. For what? For staying when I should have spoken. For enabling what hurt us all. He wasn't excusing her. He was owning himself. Growth looks like that. Against my expectations, my mother visited him in the hospital. No makeup. No performance. Just two aging souls facing the truth. "I loved you," she said quietly. "But I loved comfort more." My father nodded. And I hid behind money instead of courage. They didn't reconcile. But they released each other. Sometimes closure doesn't need reunion. People began calling me the good daughter. The chosen heir. But labels are heavy. I started questioning myself. Who am I without this story? That question haunted me. Because inheritance isn't just about money. It's about responsibility. I met him at a community fundraiser. His name was Ethan. He didn't know who I was. He talked about purpose, not profit. About service, not status. For the first time, I didn't introduce myself as Raymond Cole's daughter. I introduced myself as me. And it felt freeing. Weeks later, Ethan found out the truth. The name. The foundation. The wealth. He went quiet. I waited. Finally, he said, "I was afraid of that." "Why?" I asked. "Because I didn't want to love an idea," he said. "I wanted to love a person." I smiled through tears. My father's lesson had reached me too. 2 years later, Marcus showed up at my door. No suit. No arrogance. "I messed up," he said simply. I studied him. "Do you want forgiveness?" I asked, "or restoration?" He swallowed. Forgiveness. That was a start. I helped Marcus get a job. Not a big one. An honest one. He hated it at first. Then he grew. Humility will do that. One quiet night, my father called me into his room. "When I'm gone," he said, "don't protect my image. Protect the lesson." I nodded, tears falling. "Let them know," he continued, "that wealth without love is poverty in disguise." The world once believed my father was dead. But the truth was, he had simply shed a false life, and in doing so, gave me mine. My father's strength faded slowly. Not dramatically. Not with headlines. Just quieter steps. Longer rests. Deeper breaths. He stopped walking as far. Stopped correcting people. Stopped pretending he was invincible. One evening, as I helped him into a chair, he smiled and said, "I spent my whole life building things that would outlive me. I didn't realize I needed to live first." I sat beside him, holding his hand. "You did live," I said. "You just needed a second life." He nodded. And this one mattered more. Naomi came back into our lives slowly. Not with demands. With silence. She volunteered at one of the schools funded by the foundation, at first anonymously. One day, I saw her wiping a child's tears. She didn't notice me watching. Later, she said, "I didn't know how empty I was until I had nothing to perform for." She didn't ask for money. She asked for purpose. That mattered. Ethan proposed on a quiet evening. No ring worth millions. No cameras. No speeches. Just a simple question. "Will you build a life with me, without hiding?" I said yes. My father cried. At the wedding, there were no billionaires in the front row. Just teachers. Students. Neighbors. My father walked me halfway down the aisle. Then stopped. "This part," he said, placing my hand in Ethan's, "you walk freely." The foundation grew, but stayed intentional. Every project had a rule. If it doesn't restore dignity, we don't fund it. My father insisted we visit every community. Shake hands. Listen. Eat local food. Money should follow humility, he said. Not the other way around. Against advice, my father agreed to one final interview. No suit. No script. "I faked my death," he said plainly. "Not for drama. For truth." The interviewer asked, "Was it worth it?" My father didn't hesitate. "I lost an image," he said. "But I gained a daughter. A conscience. A life." The clip went viral. But this time, he didn't watch it. The morning he died, the sun came in gently. No machines screaming. No chaos. Just breath. He squeezed my hand once. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" I asked through tears. "For loving me when I disappeared." And then, he was gone. For real this time. The second funeral was small. No press. No speeches about money. People cried, not for a billionaire, but for a man who learned. I didn't question anything this time. No doubt. No suspicion. Just love. He left me letters. Not assets. Letters. Each one for a different season of my life. Motherhood. Failure. Success. Doubt. In one, he wrote, "If you ever wonder whether you did enough, remember, love is never measured in totals." At the memorial, Marcus surprised everyone. He spoke honestly. "I failed my father," he said. "But he didn't fail me. He showed me who I could become." No applause. Just truth. That was enough. Years passed. Children grew. Schools flourished. Sometimes students asked, "Why is the foundation named coal?" I'd smile and say, "Because someone once learned the hard way what really matters." One night, I dreamed of my father. He was young, laughing, free. "You don't need to carry me anymore," he said. I woke up at peace. My father pretended to be dead to find love. In the end, he lived more honestly than most ever do. And I learned this. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the courage to live awake. Life didn't pause after my father's burial. It rarely does. Bills still came. Schools still needed funding. People still knocked on my door asking for help, advice, opportunity. But something had changed. I no longer felt like I was living under his shadow. I was walking with his lessons. Sometimes at night, I sat alone on the balcony and remembered the man he used to be. Sharp suits, impatient tone, eyes always on the future. Then I smiled, thinking of the man he became. Slow, honest, present. Growth doesn't erase the past. It redeems it. My mother and I met for coffee one afternoon. No tension. No expectations. Just two women who had survived the same man in different ways. "I didn't know how to love without fear," she said quietly. I stirred my cup. I didn't know how to speak without guilt. We looked at each other. And in that moment, we saw each other clearly, for the first time. We didn't hug. But we didn't need to. At every event, someone eventually asked it. "If your father were alive, what would he say about all this?" I always answered the same way. He'd ask who we listen to today. Because my father learned that leadership isn't about being remembered. It's about who speaks after you stop talking. One afternoon, a handwritten note arrived from a student at one of the schools. It read, "Dear Miss Cole, I didn't know people like me could matter until your school opened. I want to build things one day too." I cried. Not because of pride. Because that letter proved something important. My father's second life was still working. Pregnancy changes the way you see everything. Especially your parents. One night, as I stared at my reflection, my hand resting on my stomach, I whispered, "I will not confuse love with control." That promise mattered more than any inheritance. Marcus called me late one night. "I ran into people who used to fear me," he said. "They didn't recognize me." "How did that feel?" I asked. "Free," he replied after a pause. "Terrifying, but free." Redemption isn't loud. It's quiet consistency. Naomi started teaching art. Not for status. For healing. "I don't want to decorate wealth anymore," she said. "I want to express truth." She sold her first painting for almost nothing. She smiled like it was priceless. A movie studio reached out. They wanted to tell my father's story. Drama. Suspense. Scandal. I declined. "Why?" they asked. "Because the point wasn't the death," I said. "It was the awakening." Some stories aren't meant to be consumed. They're meant to be lived. On the anniversary of his real death, I visited the park bench where we once sat. I placed my hand on the wood and said softly, "You did enough." The wind answered. That was enough too. People think endings come with certainty. They don't. They come with choice. Every day, I choose honesty over comfort. Presence over performance. Love over legacy. My father once pretended to be dead to find love. I choose to stay alive to protect it. The day my child was born, the nurse placed him in my arms and smiled. "He's calm," she said. "Like he knows he's safe." I looked down at his tiny face and felt something settle in my chest. My father's fear of being unloved, unseen, reduced to money, ended with him. I would not pass it down. Ethan squeezed my hand. What will you teach him first? I didn't hesitate. That love is not something you earn, I said. It's something you give. Years later, on a quiet evening, I opened the last envelope my father had left. I had saved it for when I felt ready. Inside, he wrote, "If this is the last letter you read, then you've lived long enough to know this truth. People will always chase what you have. Few will stay for who you are. Choose those few. Be one of them." I folded the letter carefully. And I smiled. One day, my son asked, "Mom, why do people know our name?" I knelt in front of him. "Because your grandfather learned something important," I said. "What?" "That money can buy attention, but only love reveals truth." He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. The foundation continued, but my role changed. I stepped back. New leaders rose. The work didn't need my face anymore. That was the goal all along. Legacy that doesn't depend on presence is legacy done right. On a warm afternoon, I sat on the porch watching my family laugh. Not perfect. Not wealthy in the old way. But real. I thought of the man who once pretended to be dead to discover who loved him. In the end, he found something greater. He found truth. And he gave it to me. My father's name will fade from headlines. His money will change hands. His buildings may someday fall. But this remains. Love that stayed when wealth disappeared. Truth that survived comfort. A family rebuilt on honesty. Some people die once. My father died twice. And lived fully, only the second time.